Today's session.
Debbie, just let everybody join.
Hi everyone, welcome. Thank you for joining. We'll get started in a moment.
So, Debbie, you can see me, right? Okay, that's good.
Thank you, Ivan.
You're welcome. This is so exciting.
It is indeed.
We got a chat.
Hello everyone. Thank you for
Hello.
joining.
We are live.
So hello everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar. We're very pleased to have you join us for the third webinar in our four-part webinar series on VCF 9.1. Before we get started, just to introduce myself, my name's Debbie Sassine. I lead marketing across Asia Pacific, Japan and the Middle East, and I will be your host for today. On the screen today, before we actually deep dive into the session, I did want to call out a few things about the webinar today. First and foremost, if you have any questions, please be sure to post them in the Q&A chat rather than just in the chat column. And also, we will be sharing a recording from today's session as well. So I know we often get questions around whether recordings will be available. Shortly after today's session, we'll send you an email with some resources and the session recording as well. But before we get started, I just wanted to take a moment to introduce you to our Explore and Explore on Tour events that are happening across the US and across the region as well. So Explore Las Vegas, you are all welcome to join us in Vegas from August 31 to September 2nd. And we're also taking the best of Explore into the regions in Mumbai and Singapore. So we have an event in Mumbai from the 29th to the 30th of September and also in Singapore from the 1st to the 2nd of October. If you are interested in joining us, and we welcome you all, please scan the QR code on your screen now, and we'd love to see you there in person. So moving on to introductions, onto the next slide, please. I did want to introduce today's presenters. We have an excellent lineup of presenters today. First and foremost, you can see is Iwan Rahabok, who's the Technology Product Manager for VCF, based out of Singapore. Welcome, and thank you for joining us. Samir
Thank you.
Rashan. Thank you. Samir Rashan, also based out of Singapore, is our Executive Solutions Architect, and Abhijit Timbal is also joining us as one of our presenters today. So we have three great presenters. But in addition to that, we have a host of panelists joining us that can answer your questions in the Q&A. We really encourage lots of questions to come through today. We are here to support you, answer any questions that you might have around migration and upgrades. So please don't hesitate, send your questions through, and we will do our best to answer as many as we can throughout today's session. So with that, thank you again for joining us. Thank you for our presenters. And Iwan, I will hand over to you to get started. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, good morning, right? And Debbie mentioned earlier, Explore in Vegas is coming. If you're going there, find me there. Yeah. So today is a third series, and before that, we're happy to say that we have a good number of PMs, Navaneet, Anuradha, Sriram, Soumya, on the panels, together with Vincent. Right, so there is two parallel tracks while I'm speaking and presenting to you here. If you have any questions, any doubts, feel free to ask in the chat panel. Okay. So this is the third part of a series, right? We talk about the modern architecture, the VKS, and now we want to talk about how do you manage this private cloud, right? What are the best practices? What are the practical things you can do to transform this private cloud? Now, we only have 90 minutes, so we'll cover some of these topics. Yeah. Now, in the private cloud, which is a strategic part of your company, whether you are a bank or telco or government, this private cloud is probably the single largest computer in your company. So it's just a strategic, it's a board level discussion. And as a result, the various components of it. The first thing is the people. I know we are in the AI agentic AI era, but human is more important than ever. When you have this private cloud, the two most important people, your tenants, the application team, and your boss, your CIO, your CEO, you need to make sure that they are happy with the service provided by the private cloud. So we will do a live demo on that, on how you can, despite being a shared infrastructure, you can present an application-centric management. I put the capacity optimizations here because, as we know, there's a lot of, in a sense, optimization opportunity. You need to right size, you need to reclaim. This is actually more of a people problem as opposed to a platform problem. You take care of the people, the platform will follow. So that is the first P. Now the second P, which is your process. And together with your colleague, because there are multiple persona in this private cloud management, you can transform from a complaint-based operation, alert-driven, towards the SLA-based management. And we'll explain why KPI is a necessary and practical steps towards that. Now, things happens in productions, right? And you normally want to, the first time it happened, it could be forgivable. You know, you take time to figure things out, but the second time, you better know it right away, right? So you want to set up an alert, right? And this alert has to consider the various conditions. So it's not just one way, and we'll talk about that. Now, the third part is the platform itself, your system architecture. As you know, you are running the VCF and version 9.1 now. It is a unique type of software. And, you know, we have different kind of software, right? You know, you got office productivity, you got CRM, you got ERP, etc. This thing is a cloudware. It's a set that virtualize your hardware into a pool. So this virtualize the network storage and security, right? There's two sides of VCF. There is the side of it as a Broadcom software that you need to patch, update, lifecycle. And then there is a part of it, a side of it that is part of your private cloud. So you need to know both. And Abhijit Timble is going to do a demo on how this integrated management can be done in VCF operation. Now, I'm going to share an example of a customer here because it's a good lesson learned from customer. This is Standard Chartered Bank many years ago. I still remember it. And his name is Anthony Hodge. He's saying that, Iwan, I do not put things into my data center that cannot be managed because that is setting up a time bomb. Because you know things will go wrong, right? So you need the ability to see it. So make observability as a first class feature, right? And we are releasing in 9.1, as you know, the 2 seconds, the 20-second observability integrated logs inside there, right? And the other thing that you can do also, and I've been working with leading customers, you want to model your private cloud. And you want to quantify things so that it's easier for you to manage at scales. And then the third thing. Now, I have the privilege to travel around the world and seeing many customers. And none of you has a bad private cloud. They're all good. But what is good? When you say you can handle E1, I can handle gold, silver, bronze. How does the actual resource scheduler, your hypervisor, your vSAN NSX deliver that differentiated QoS? What are the settings that are delivering your prompts? So that's part of your platform, right? And then the third part is the pillars, right? And in your private cloud, you want it to be healthy, right? And what is health? So Samir Roshan is going to talk about it, right? And capacity is becoming an important part because of the rising cost in hardware. So Samir is going to talk about extreme capacity. What can you do to fully optimize the consumption while minimizing the contention? Now, obviously, the 4P that we talked about earlier, they form a framework. Now I wanna pause here. I've been in VMware for 18 years, folks. I started the VMware user group in Singapore, Indonesia. I've met many of you. We are changing and you are changing. I said earlier, this private cloud is the single largest computer your company has. Every company is an IT company, or now it's an AI company. Where does it run? On your private cloud. You need to look at it. It's not just VCF, it's not just private cloud. How is the whole governance, your framework? Now you may say, hey, Ewan, we are using ITIL, we are using ITSM, we are using TOGAF. But as you know, all this ticket passing, incident management, is that a good experience to your tenants? So you want to rise up to the enterprise architect, right? And Samir and I talk a lot about this thing, right? In fact, he's got a whole website on enterprise architecture, right? You want to rise up towards there, right? And look at this whole thing, not just the platform. Okay, in the interest of time, folks, I'm gonna jump into the first one, the people. Okay, the two most important people: your customer, your boss. Because if they are not happy, man, it's gonna be difficult for the rest. So what does your CIO care? It's a shared environment. What is the fundamental difference between private cloud and public cloud? The fundamental difference is your private cloud cost is fixed, is kept. You don't have a bill shock. In the public cloud, you have a bill shock. But that also means your capacity is finite, but your workload is not. They keep on growing. So how does this shared environment serve them all? Now, it's a privilege for me to engage many of you with 100,000 VMs, 200,000 VMs. I was with a company in Dallas, 400,000 VMs. And what I noticed and what I learned from you guys is there is this 1% that you guys call the crown jewel. This set of business application are defining your company. They are your brand. They are your revenue. They are only 1% of the footprint, but that is close in your CISO's heart. So what can you do? You can create a simple dashboard. By the way, I learned this dashboard from a bank in Malaysia and a telco in India. I didn't come up with it, right? You guys are the practitioners. You guys are the one that knows. So every application, let's say your internet banking, your shop floor control, if you are manufacturing, is represented by a single icon. It's color coded: green, yellow, orange, red. 4 colors, right? And that's exactly what we have in VCF operations. Color coded. It is telling how is it doing in your private cloud. Now, you are an infrastructure guy. You're the chief architect of the infrastructure. You are the chief admin of the whole private cloud. You're not an application guy. You're not a coder. So this set of boxes, they are not measuring business transactions or your databases, your application. No, this is your infrastructure. This is your Windows. This is your Linux. That is telling you, is it because of infrastructure? Yes or no. Simple as that. So this part. Now, what is the drawback when you're showing something like an individual icons like this, right? What's the drawback of that? Well, your CIO is not going to look at it, every 5 minutes, right? Once a day, twice a day. So you can't see the trend. But if you combine it together into a trend chart, then he will be able to see it. Then she will be able to see it. Does it match your business cycle? By combining only your mission critical application at this level, it doesn't really matter whether it is Gen AI or Kubernetes, we have VKS or classic VM. It doesn't matter because this is at the CIO level. This is like your stock market index, right? If this thing is dropped, that is not a good day in your private cloud. Now from here, then you can drill down and continue the pattern of having color coded so that it's easier for your CIO to understand. There is nothing technical, nothing mentioned about Kubernetes, node pod out of memory or databases. There's nothing. It's all green, yellow, orange, red. I'm going to flip to demos for now. And let me just do this first and bring this up. How many of you are using the hands-on lab? You should, this is just hands-on lab. This is set up by Abhijit and team, right? So you can see my screen, right? And so I'm just going to do this. Okay. Log into, what is this? Because earlier I was having a call with customer, so it was, this is fine. Okay. Let me just drag it here. Yeah, so this is a live demo. And okay, so we talked about it earlier, the dashboard, right? So you can go here and go to this critical business application. I'm going to minimize this thing. So you can see it better, and then minimize this thing also. Okay, better. Okay, so this is what I meant earlier. This is your stock market index. This is only your crown jewel, right? If this thing is good, it is a good day. If this thing is bad, you know you're going to get a call from the CIO. This thing is the average of all your critical. Now, do not populate it with like 2 dozen or 3 dozens of crown jewel, because if you do that, see, if you have like 30 crown jewel, the number 1 is by far more important than number 30. So you have a gap. In that case, you're better off having 2 separate dashboards. This is really what your CIO cares. Now, this is the average of this. So I have 2 applications here, right? And this Abhijit just created an application called VCF, right? And then you will see the various components of VCF itself, SDDC manager, etc. Okay. And if I click on operation, I think I can see operations here. There you go, right? Now, if I go to, let's say, another application, right? So we'll see, I have my different tiers over here, right? And then and this is a good example. Obviously, this is in the lab, right? I don't have the load, but this is what you want to see, right? And this is all green. There's a bit of yellow drop here, right? And so these are the VMs that are forming the tier, and we can drill down. These are the VM, right? And says just not. Let's say we choose another tier. Let's see. Yeah. And so these are the VMs, right? And from the VMs, I can get into the services inside. If you enable the service discovery manager, you will see the services inside, right? And from here also, so I can then drill down into the Linux OS itself. I mean, this particular happens to be running Photon, right? And so you can see the various, processes inside Linux. These are all guest OS level counters, and I can see the individual virtual CPU from Photon. So this is not the VM level counters, right? And the partitions inside. So like you can see, this is Linux partition. This is not VM, virtual disk 1, virtual disk 2, right? And you can get into inside individual performance of the disk, right? So and of course you can come back, if you want to see it at the VM level here, you can get into the VM's performance, right? And get the details of the VM. All right. So all these counters are available. If I click here, that depth of the observability is there. And some of these counters, actually, they are coming from the guest and they are 20 seconds peak. So it's not that you miss the observability. So that is a simple dashboard. Later we'll cover how they're being implemented, right? And you basically, I'll cover one part of it. You define the business applications here. So this is just how you saw my bookstore, right? So this is the bookstore, right? We go here. That's how you saw the tier, right? Inside here. So you define it all here. And only the crown jewel. And this enables you to say to the CIO that the private cloud have an application-centric awareness of operation. That is your first dashboard. You don't look at the infrastructure first or NSX or vSAN. You looked at the crown jewel. That's how you start. This is part of the transformation of your management, right? Now I'm going to the demo because I didn't have Windows in the lab. If I from current slide. Okay. Yeah. So basically, I demo earlier Linux, right? But with Telegraph, you can also get Windows, right? And all this, like you can tell, how many processes, how many threads, whether system call, etc. These are all available through Telegraph, right? So with that, right, that was basically from your stock market index to the individual critical application, to the tier, to the VM, to the Surface, and down to Windows, now or OS. Now from here, you can extend into the application. That will be application specific already, yeah? And this scope is to answer the question, is the crown jewel not performing because of you, yes or no, right? And by having this transparency, sorry, I clicked the wrong thing. By having this transparency, it's a step towards that proactive SLA base with your tenants. So we covered that part only. Yeah? That is your first dashboard. Now, the second item that I mentioned earlier, this right sizing. A number of you struggle with downsizing, taking resources back from the tenants. And my take on it, because what is being downsized is not VM. A VM, personally, I don't like to use the word virtual machine. I like to use the word virtual motherboard. Then you can imagine it's a piece of board with CPU and memory on it, right? And it is a machine you think of, coffee machine, vending machine, ATM machine. It's a complete set. But the VM is just a motherboard. It's incomplete. What is being right size is Windows or Linux or Kubernetes. So if that is what being right size, and if you don't own Windows, Linux, and Kubernetes, I think the first step is to have an alignment with those owners and to use metrics that they are convinced. And one unique capability of VCF operation is it can, through the VMware tools, is giving you the memory metrics inside the the guest OS, Windows and Linux, right? All these things are discussed, are documented in depth in our manual and in my book, right? So go with that. Now, because I'm just mindful of the time, I'm moving to the second P, okay, which is the process. I learned from many of you that it is absolutely possible for you to move from this, ticket generation, help desk, passing one incident to another different team, right? And by the time it came to you, the ticket is very long. There's a lot of metadata, and there is no analysis, and a lot of, brainstorming between different team, right? You can move towards KPI. Now, why KPI is needed? Because in order to have an SLA, an SLA, let's say in this case, performance SLA, okay, between you and the tenants. Before you put an SLA, you need to be pretty comfortable what you can deliver, because your goal is to have like 3 9, 4 9s SLA, not 2 9s, right? So you need to know exactly what your private cloud is delivering now. First, what is the fact? That fact is KPI. So what you can do, you can model vSphere cluster's capacity, vSphere cluster performance, vSphere cluster risk, because you don't want to have performance problem, you don't want a low capacity, you introduce risk, leading indicators, right? You don't want lagging indicators, right? And so you can model it. And by having all this model, you can get an insight into your environment. And it doesn't matter. I shared earlier, I work with customers, 400,000 VMs. You are not, in a sense, yes, it is harder, but by having this stock market, etc., you can monitor at scale, right? And then this insight then form as an input to your standard operating procedures, your daily cadence, your weekly cadence, your monthly cadence, your quarterly cadence, right? Because you don't buy hardware, every week, right? And then the third part, earlier I talked about RCA, right? And when something happens, whether it is Microsoft, Windows or Linux or VMware, or Cisco, the vendors will typically give you recommendation, right? Change, let's say the ESXi, NIC buffer from 1024 to 4048. Change it by 4 times. Why? Because you will notice they'll tell you that the load has changed. That's why you must change it. Because the reason why you have packet drop because your ring buffer was full. Change it up. Now, if you change it up, what happened? What happened when the loads go down? You change it back. You have to ask the vendor, do we change it back or not? Because if we don't change it back, then why didn't we have this since day one? So this kind of alerts that is adjusting depending on the load. You want to institutionalize this thing. This thing is needed when you want to go towards SLA and self-driving. By the time your KPI is done, you're on top of it. SLA is just the easy part, right? And I think you walk from where you stand and measure it, profile it. VCF operation have this rich capability for you to profile. Now, the other thing what you can do is you look at your process, even the reactive part, okay? Over time, you can reduce the reactive portion, and so they become more and more, they are proactive. Let's say you got a complaint or you got an alert. What do you do? But let's say when you call E1, hey, E1, come over. When I do that for a number of times, and it is a joy to help you guys because I'm learning from you guys. Okay, when you call me up, you notice that I will check for things. I'll check your config, right? And you notice that whatever settings, versions that the experts are checking, it can be codified. If it can be codified, which it can, why don't you have it as part of your daily check? have it every morning. So by the time you come to office, you know for sure your environment is clean. Same thing with availability. Was there any soft errors? Was there any flip-flop? You know, the nick flapping. Again, it can be checked. Now, many vendors, we are one of them. We publish known bugs, release note. We have all this health check in VCF operation. Again, it is there for you, right? So you can have it automatic. Now, the one that you can't control is consumption, because you don't control the load, right? And security guy decided to make a mistake in releasing the security scanning, and the whole cluster saturated. We've seen it. I've seen it in Broadcom. I've seen it in VMware IP, right? This is where you can say, what happens if it goes up? What should I do? Anticipate. What are your remediation action? What are you going to do? So by knowing all these things, by preempting all these things, you are more ready towards this self-driving. Now that is the reactive part. The proactive part, we talk about the first one. You set up a daily health check. By the time you come to office, no config issue, no availability issue, no known bugs, and consumption, you already got it handled. We talk about, we'll talk about this insight after this, actually, the distinguish between insight and alert, okay? Modeling, and I'll mention it after this, and then the baselining, okay? So all this thing becomes input to you, the human expert, someone who knows the architecture, someone who knows the environment, and someone who knows the load. This fit into, because you want to drive these self-driving things so that then you can focus on innovations. So now taking it a bit further, we talk about business apps. I will show you daily check. Okay, I'll show you the knock screen, and I'll show you the log analysis. We'll demo on that. By doing all these things, hopefully alerts is relegated from the first thing to the last thing. I really hope that the private cloud can be the shining example of how operation is run, because it's quiet. There are not many alerts. It's quiet. Right? Now, on that, it is important to distinguish between reactive and proactive. It doesn't matter whether the user doesn't know, whether your boss doesn't know. It doesn't make it proactive. When you are being alerted or notified, when you react, that's reactive. Time has started. What you want to do is you want to get an insight. You are seeing things. There's no alert. You're seeing symptoms. They are low. They're not massive. But and you see the totality. You see the whole iceberg. You're looking at the dashboard, multiple dashboard, logs, events, etc. And you're seeing an observation, right? So that is proactive. Proactive is much harder to do than a reactive. Reactive, you can delegate it to an L1. The other thing is urgent and important. An alert is not a to-do list or reminder, okay? And it doesn't matter how important it is. If it is not urgent, do not set as an alert. I know it is a very difficult habit, because things that are important, they tend to be urgent. I get that, okay? But if you want to move towards this self-driving, separate urgency and important. And an example of things that are important but not urgent. So you notice in the last 1 week or a couple of days, random slowness impacting different VMs. But the different owners are not complaining because they're only being hit once and they may not even notice, but you notice that. You see it across your environment. You are the guy that sees the whole thing. You gain an insight out of it. That is important. That's not urgent. You don't want to be alerted like 10 times. You want to see the big picture. And that means there's no such thing as a yellow alert. So the logic is when you architect your entire private cloud alerts, follow this rule. If it is urgent and important, red color. Doesn't really matter what it is. Is it the only definition? It is urgent and important. Red color. Now what does red mean? Red doesn't mean you drop everything and attend to it right away. Red means I'm gonna take a look at it, half an hour, 1 hour, as soon as I can. But I'm not gonna delay it. If it is urgent but not important, I'll take a look at it sometimes today. I know it's urgent, okay? But I'm in the meetings or etc. I can't handle it. I'm busy with other things. I'll take a look at it before I go home. I'll make sure it doesn't go to the next day. If it is not urgent, it doesn't really matter how important it is. So many yellow alerts, right? Because typically they are easier to cross the threshold. They are lower. So for every one red, you may have 5 orange and 25 yellow. So if you set yellow as alert, you have a lot of alerts. So yellow, no alert. You want to see all this yellow together with the orange and the red, okay? Next day, tomorrow morning, in totality. Why am I having yellow in different places of my cloud? What is going on here? Yellow inside requires thinking, yeah? So now I'm gonna demo the knock screen. Hold on, huh? Okay, come back to here. Okay. The knock screen, yes, here, inside here. So we have a number of out-of-the-box dashboards. And an example, okay? VM changes, the volatility of your environment, right? Are they matching your expectation? Because if you're seeing a lot of VMs being power off, that is not a good day. Especially it doesn't match against the change window, right? And VCF operation track 21 different types of changes on your environment. There can be changes in the inventory with the deleted, unregistered, reconfigure, cloning, create is all being tracked. And I can even see it here, right? All this deletion. So this needs to match your expectation. Same thing with change in location, whether it is vMotion, storage vMotion, both vMotion, whole migration, every different type is tracked. So it is matching your expectation. Some of these things could be security problems. Like what's going on here? Someone does something to my cloud, right? And change the state, of course, especially VM being reset, being suspended. It's like, why? Why is this thing happening in my environment? It should be 0, right? So all these things, they need to match your expectation, which takes us to an important point. Your private cloud is a living, breathing, large computer. You need to know how it behaves. You need to get a feel of it, and it has to match your business cycle. Now, the other thing is, let's take a look at it. Because a cluster is the smallest computers. I see cluster as basically one machine, one computer, right? And I treat it as one logical computers. And from here, you can see this is the average performance of all clusters. Now, this is different to what we shared earlier, which is your crown jewel. This is now your whole estate. The clusters is performing, is serving the VMs, CPU, memory, disk network, yes or no. Does it perform well or not? This is not asking whether the host is working hard or not. This is not asking whether the kitchen is busy or not. This is asking whether the diners in the dining area is being served or not. This is it. This is your clusters, the entire thing. This is what you want to see. You want to see green. And this is an individual ESXi in the clusters. Right? Now, if you want to see how busy the kitchen is, you click this. And notice that the position here, like this, if I see this, host number CLO2. If I go here, this is also CLO2. So you can tell the knock screen, you can put it side by side. The two dashboard is synergizing as one. I'm just mindful of time here, Debbie. It is 3:40. And so then there are other knock screens, yeah? What else I'm going to say? And so we talk about knock screen, okay? And yeah, so these are the design that are part of the knock screen. What I want to say is, I see many knock screens, and sometimes they just stay there for red. Nobody does anything. So why? Well, it's meant to be red. Well, it's not. No, knock screen is meant to be green. Red means do something. So you can design your knock screen. You can cover the whole life cycle, the whole cycle of your public cloud. You know, is it up? Is it fast? Is it secure? Right? Go and check it, all these things. You can cycle it in ops, right? You can auto-rotate it in VCF operation, right? And then the daily check. And you can create a set of this. We provided an example for you for vSphere. Daily check. Every morning, you have a set of questions that you want to be answered. That answer can be implemented as a super matrix or as dashboard. Like from here, okay, like this is the last 24 hour, the worst cluster performance is here. So with this, I'm good. But here there is an error package here. So I quickly can see if this thing is all green, I'm done. Like within 5 minutes, I'm done, right? Now, I didn't have the log inside yet, but what you can do also, because the log has a different nature to metrics, right? Again, you can ask question, are undesirable events rising? Right? There are things that are not supposed to happen. We can tolerate, 1%, etc. Right? And but if they're becoming noisier, that is not good. And you can list it essentially, right? And then what after that you can design a log insights dashboard that are answering the question: undesirable VM event, undesirable snapshot, issue, security, right? Are people logging into ESXi console and then issuing commands, right? How many commands are being issued? And you can do all those things. And yeah, maybe I'll show it to you like with 9.1. Log is integrated, that there is now a logs widget here inside here. And you can cycle it is part of your VCF ops now, right? Like you can have a list of VMs over here, and then you can say, well, I'm going to drive this thing. All right, so I choose a VM and it drives that, right? Okay, and then the next part is the platform, and I will hand over to Abhijit soon here, but allow me to say a few things first. I mentioned earlier that this VCF by VMware by Broadcom is a unique category of software. There is two sides to it, and it is a software, it's a product that you need to, configure, certificate, password, you need to analyze the log, right? You need to look at your content library, I mean, those kind of things. It's a product that you need to look after it. And you need to configure it. And after that, you start loading, adding the business workload, the VMs on top of it, right? So that then once you add all this business workload, VCF takes the shape also as your platform. So there are two sides of it, right? And seeing it, the two sides, which Abhijit's going to do a demo after this, it helps you see. Now, this is just the detailed drill downs of it, right? On how this private cloud. I recommend that each of you, because your private clouds are slightly different, and develop an architecture diagram that you can show it to your CIO, you can show it to an application architect, you can show it to the enterprise architect. This is our private cloud. Yeah. So I'm gonna start here and gonna pass it to Abhijit. Abhijit Bhai, are you ready to do the demo?
Yeah, Ivan, sure. I'll just
Thank you
share
very
my
much.
screen. Yep. So are you able to see my screen?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, yeah. All right, so yeah, so I'm logged into the VCF operations 9.1 release, right? And this is the product homepage. So I just wanted to give a quick overview around the operate section today. So VCF operations centers around the 4 aspects to run the private cloud infrastructure. That's the operate. You have the manage section here. Then we have the protect, all related to security operations. And then we have the build section. Okay. So under operate, so VCF operations provides like infrastructure operations, like capability to monitor and troubleshoot components that make up the VCF. Then health and diagnostics visibility into your VCF cloud using real-time metrics with 20-second metric collection and high resolution 2 seconds metric collection as well. And then application operations, which Ivan just spoke about and demoed the dashboards. So now when we deploy VCF using the VCF installer, so most of the adapters, most of the management packs are auto-configured. So this enables VCF operations to start collecting data, metrics, and alerts, which help simplify a lot of our admin tasks. So the overview page here gives you a summary of all your VMware Cloud accounts being monitored by VCF operations. Here you can see the inventory of your VCF stack, like your domains, the data centers, cluster, ESX host, VMs deployed in your environment. As we come below, so you'll see the findings page, the diagnostics findings, which will highlight security risk based on advisories like your CVEs and VMSAs. Then we see the certificates. So you can view and manage such certificates for all VCF core and management components with auto renewal capabilities for ESX and other VCF components. And then we have the visibility into overall capacity, right? You can see the overall capacity usage in terms of CPU, memory, disk space, and any shortfalls, like how many capacity remaining, time remaining. Then we see the open alerts, the cost of running the business, and then we see the top objects growth trend. Okay. So then we have a overview page here. Again, these are like, you'll have all the information like compute in one page, storage in one page, and network in one page. So if you click on compute, so this is where you'll see all the compute inventory. So you can see the overall inventory. You can see the cluster availability. You can see the number of hosts which build the cluster, which are part of the cluster. You can see the ESX host availability here, right? You can see the uptime of the ESX host. And then you see the overall trend of vCenter and ESX health issues over time. So if you click on storage page, again, this is like your landing page for providing all information of storage, right? Yeah. So this is where you see visibility into active storage specific alerts, like all your critical and warning alerts. You can see the capacity usage of vCenter clusters and others. You can see the data stores that have been deployed into VCF stack. And then you see the diagnostics page here. So there is a new page called VCF Health. Again, so this provides or helps analyze the cluster status and provides detailed health findings with remediation guidance in vCenter. So you can directly launch into vCenter for detailed remediation steps. And then we have the performance insights where you can quickly run some diagnostic checks against your vSAN for troubleshooting and benchmarking and optimizing capabilities. And then we have a dedicated network page, which provides a complete network inventory, like your NSX inventory. So you can see the NSX health. You can see the deployments, like the number of instances of NSX have been deployed, the ESX edge nodes, ESX host. You can see the VPCs that have been configured. You can see the tier 1, tier 0 gateways that have been configured, right? So you can see the network alert specific trends. You can see the NSX edge, cluster utilization, ESX host, network utilization, and overall traffic summary view. And then we also have this network assessment and value. So this is basically like if you have customers, we are still on VDS, right? So this will help for better optimizing your existing VDS networks and show the value of adopting VPC networking. So your left section basically shows your VDS configuration, and the right section shows your projected view, what you would gain by moving to VPC networking. Similarly for flows, right? So in VDS, you might have a lot of hairpin traffic, right? This is how the hairpin traffic looks. But if you move to VPC, what are the advantage you get, right? You're going away, you'll reduce the hairpinning traffic, which will improve the mobility scores overall by moving to VPC. So this is where you can use the network assessment and value page within the networks. Then the inventory, this is again gives you a very high level overview or summary of your VCF deployment. So here, this is the instance, this is the management, this is the workload domain. You can see the management vCenter, this is the data center here. As we expand further, you will get the cluster, and you can see the overall ESX host. And here you'll see the overall properties of your ESX that have been configured. You can see the utilization, performance, the map data stores. On the metrics tab, you'll be able to see the overall topology of your ESX and all the VMs which are part of your ESX. And metrics will show you the overall metrics for your ESX host. And then you have dedicated log section here to monitor logs for a specific ESX server. Alerts, again, Ivan spoke a lot about it, so I'll keep it short here. But what we would do is basically, these are like your default alerts that are generated by VCF operations. Again, this is customizable based on every organization and team requirements. So the focus should be to keep only actionable alerts. And that takes few iterations and efforts to properly fine tune them. So basically, we review these alerts on a regular basis. We will take actions, disable unwanted alert definitions, and then we keep only actionable alerts. And during this period, we don't enable any outbound settings like upfront to avoid triggering of emails or webhooks based alerts until these alerts are fine-tuned and made actionable. Dashboards, again, these are like the out-of-the-box performance dashboards. So I'll skip this one because Ivan already spoke about this. Right? So this is like this provides your proactive insights before we start deploying any application workloads. And then we have the automation central here. So basically, this is like an inbuilt scheduler to run jobs within your VCF operations. So you can create jobs to automate optimization actions, like to reclaim or right size VMs. Like I have a job set up here to delete some old snapshots, like a cron job, right? Or power off some idle VMs. So you can use Automation Central to do all these things. You can also schedule like additional actions like powering on, powering off, rebooting VMs, right? And also with integration of orchestrator, you can also expand the scope here. And then we have the workbench. So workbench is basically used for advanced troubleshooting, like for an alert that gets triggered on an object and we want to investigate it further, right? So let's troubleshoot vSphere cluster backing our VCF domain. So I'll just search for cluster here and pick the management cluster. So we are first taken to this potential evidence screen where we see a summary of all the recent events that have occurred, recent property changes, all the configuration changes, right? And a list of metrics exhibiting unusual behavior. So this information can help identify potential issues affecting your cluster. Now to access the real-time metrics, we navigate to real-time analysis. So this is a new introduction of real-time metrics in 9.1, where now we see 20-second metric collection. Okay. So here we see a summary of the CPU and memory usage for the cluster. So as I zoom in here further, when we click on the data points, right, we can see the graph is being updated every 20 seconds. Okay. So we can investigate the issue further by again navigating to the VMs tab. So I can see the VMs here. And this is going to list me the top 10 VMs consuming the most CPU and memory within the cluster. And again, I can always zoom in further here, right? So to see those metrics in detail. And similarly, I can also change the scope to host. Like I want to see the top 10 hosts which are consuming the most CPU and memory within my cluster. And these are all real-time metrics collected at 20-second duration. Now, in addition to viewing the top objects for given metrics, again, we also have a custom query. So this is a way of where you can use your Prometheus query language or PromQL to build your own custom queries to pull metrics required for troubleshooting the issue. So you'll also notice there is a helpful link here, right? So you'll see the functions here, metrics, and you'll also see some sample queries. If you click on sample queries, yeah. So there are some sample queries which you can use and build your own custom query. Like in this case, I'll just pick one of the sample query here and paste and run. Yeah, so this is basically listing the capacity usage, right, for each host within the workload cluster. And again, I'll just, there is an option here to add to nodes. I'll click it here and then I'll explain later what does it mean. Okay. So this is all about real-time metrics, which is accessible through troubleshooting workbench. Then we have the metrics tab. Again, this is the 5-minute collection metrics. Again, so if you click on contention, you can see the contention metrics here, and I can always add to nodes, right? Then we have logs. So the workbench also allows ability to analyze logs for the associated VCF components. Like in this case, we can view analyze logs for associated ESX host or your vSphere cluster, right? So say suppose you want to look at specific ESX host logs, you just copy this. And we can also compare the logs. So I can just select the start date here. Okay, and search for the ESX host. I'll add one more query where I'll select time, but a different date. And I'll search for the same ESX host and compare. So basically we are comparing the logs, right? So this shows a stacked line chart now, and the log results appear side by side. And this is again a very useful tool when you want to identify if there were configuration changes at different time intervals for your ESX host or for your VMs. Basically, it will help simplify troubleshooting. And then we also have network flows within the workbench. So the workbench also introduces flows where you can analyze network flows by flow volume, traffic rate, session count, and flow count. So these are basically your top talking entities associated within the workload domain cluster. Now we can also further drill down and we can see the network flow and associated vSphere properties. Like you can see an end-to-end topology, I will show that. But like this is your source VM, this is your destination VM, right? And you can see the overall total traffic rate, and you can see the overall vSphere properties like your source IP, destination port, the protocol used for this communication. You can see the traffic type here, the source L2 VLAN, destination VLAN, right? And then you can also see the network path. This is basically the logical network path that VM takes to reach to the destination VM. Like this is your, so you can see on the left side, this is your source VM, a source ESX host, your destination ESX host. And this is the VM which is talking to the destination VM, and this is the port group through which it is traversing. Can also expand the path details here to identify what path it takes to reach to the destination VM. And now, as this is shared lab, it would be helpful, right, to annotate the cause of the issue or add notes on initial investigation, right? So we introduce a note section here so that anyone, now what happens is like we have just, say you have identified the root cause and we want to add some note sections here, right? So you can go edit here and you can update with note saying that, okay, this is your RCA issue with CPU spike, right? Something like that. So this will help. This is like, yeah, this will help you to initiate your investigation, and also this is all automatically saved. So anyone who opens the session will see this note. Okay. So now real-time metrics also supports collecting 20 seconds granular metrics at NSX edge network level using the Prometheus query language. So this allows admins now to even build troubleshooting dashboards for level 1 teams or the NOC teams, right, for initial track. So based on this, I just created one dashboard for the network monitoring, right? So this is like your edge real-time metrics dashboard, and you'll be able to monitor your NSX edges. You can monitor the CPU, memory, the load balancer, current sessions, and total packets, PPS, CPU, receive, transmit, PPS, and so on, right? So again, through real-time metrics, you can pick and choose whatever metrics you want to build using your Prometheus query language widget, and that's introduced in 9.1. So then on the metrics, again, this is another tab which is there where you can use to create and build your own custom queries to view metrics. Like say, suppose you want to see utilization of host, right? Where it's greater than 10, you can just build a query and execute. So this will show you all the metrics for all your ESX hosts within the cluster. Similarly, you can build, like this is one more example where we are looking at the virtual disk latency for all your virtual machines within your VCF. So this is how you can build custom metrics. And again, you have this search options here. Help is available, so you can build your own custom query. Then logs. Logs is where you can view and analyze logs from VCF operations console. Now, one of the key focus for logs was to complete the convergence of standalone UI capabilities into VCF operations and deprecating the log inside UI. So this has happened in 9.1. So all the logs capabilities are now integrated within VCF operations. And so there is no separate UI for logs. So now users can centrally manage log collection from one place within VCF operations. And that you can do by getting into administration, a configurations page. So under configurations, you'll see a new tab under log management. These are all the options now available in 9.1. So like, for example, log collection, say you want to customize your log sources, right? This will show all the log sources which are sending logs, and you can also customize it further. For example, you want to edit this log collection configuration, you want to enable vCenter log collection, change the log levels, filters to warning and above, or enable additional logs for your vCenter. So this all additional options are now made available with the log service. Same thing for the ESX. You can enable the ESX log collection and also the vSphere log collection. Okay. And then you have the agents. Again, so all the log agents can be now managed through this page. And by default, the VCF components have log agents installed by default. So you can see all the logs that have been installed here and also the status of the logs. Right? And then you have the integrated load balancer, basically to segregate tenants based on virtual IPs. Okay, so yeah, you can also use this log analysis page to identify which VCF components are basically sending logs. So you can go to add filter here And there is introduced a new field that is SD comp ID. Exist, and you can just filter it by comp ID. So what does it? This does is now this will give you a list of VCF components which are basically sending logs to your log insight or logs management service. Then we have the network flows. Again, the same thing that we saw. We can get complete visibility into network traffic patterns, right? So you can view the top talkers, the top talking entities by flow volume, session count, flow count, right? You can see the logical network paths, also VM talking to another VMs across your ESX host. And then we have the findings page. Again, this is basically VCF operations scans all the available signatures that indicate specific issues in your deployment, like outages or security vulnerabilities, right? So these signatures, again, based on properties and logs. And each finding will have a detailed summary, right? You can identify the severity. You can also identify the affected objects and also the recommendations. So you'll have helpful links like KB articles attached to every finding. You can also use the log assist again to send log bundles to our support team by VCF log assist tool to speed discovery and drive faster resolutions for issues. And then you have the VCF health, which helps basically to monitor the operational state of all the critical components, like your VCF instances, your ESX host, vCenters, vSANs. And in 9.1, we have extended this visibility to ESX and NSX. So if you go to ESX host, you can get a detailed view of all the ESX servers. You can identify the connectivity checks. You can see the health checks, service status checks, right? On the network utilization, you'll be able to monitor the ESX NIC performances now. So you can see the details here. And again, these are supported by real-time metrics here. Similarly, we can also monitor the NSX management service as well. So you can now monitor NSX health through VCF operations. So if you go here, you can see the overall NSX instances that have deployed. This is the NSX manager. You can click on the NSX manager cluster details here to see the management nodes. You can monitor the service status. You can monitor the utilization in terms of CPU, memory, disk, and also the disk partitions for your NSX manager deployments. And you can also monitor the NSX edges, VNA clusters. So you can pick any edge nodes. Right, so you can select here, and you can see the network utilized. You can see the overall service health of at the edge level. Also the NSX network utilization, like the data part metrics and the service metrics for your edges. So these are your data part metrics and this is for the service metrics. Okay. So VCF health is extended now to ESX and NSX in 9.1. Workloads, again, this is about the applications which Ivan already spoke about. And yeah, so this was a very high level overview on the operate section. I can quickly walk through the manage section here. Again, this is basically we expanded the cloud management across VCF fleet. So now you can maintain or you can monitor all your certs, right? Then your passwords, identity access, everything can be managed and with a single sign-on, right? Everything can be done through this console. Then you have the config management, you have the fleet settings here. And under capacity, you can also, yeah, you can, you have a dedicated page for capacity where you can assess, optimize capacity for your data centers. Right? And again, you can cost, you have this total cost of ownership. You can take actions based on by looking at the potential savings and then you also have the licensing page where you can license your entire VMware Cloud Foundation fleet or VVF deployments using the VCF operations instance. And the protect section is where you can provide continuous real-time assessment of your infrastructure security posture by monitoring the encryption, readiness, critical security advisories. Then you have the audit trail, audit records, which provides VCF-wide analysis, right? So you can investigate all the user actions across all components in a time-sliced view. And last is on the build. So this capability, again, provides ability to deploy and manage lifecycle of your private cloud, like patching, upgrading of your infrastructure. So in 9.1, the VCF operations now provides a fleet lifecycle feature to streamline the lifecycle management of all your management components. So you can install, upgrade, patch, backup, restore can be done from here. And also, you can maintain the various management components that constitute your like your VCF operations, log management. So if you see here, like we have this log management service, and you can see the service is running. If you can scale it up, you can increase the storage size, you can generate support bundles, you just start service from here. So this is where you can manage your management components and the VCF components. So yeah, this was a quick tour on a quick walkthrough of your 9.1 updates in VCF operations 9.1. So I'll hand it over to Ivan now to take it over.
Thank you very much, Abhijit. As you guys can see, right, that is a very rich and integrated capability of VCF Ops, right? In the interest of time, and let me share my screen here. Okay, and I'm gonna move to the third. Hold on. Start now. So you guys can see me, right? Okay, good. Okay, good. We're back. So we're gonna cover the third P, which is the platform, right? And as you all know this thing. You are practitioners. You cannot manage what you cannot measure, right? So instead of relying on opinion, what is fast, what is good, you can model it. So the question is, how do you model? And how do you model in a manner that is easy to understand? Let's say 0 to 100%. We all can relate to 0 to 100%, right? That is color coded. And so that we can see the changes, from green to yellow. We have a leading indicator, we have early warning, a model that can be consistently applied, to performance, capacity, risk, right? And you want this consistency because in a large environment, if there are too many variants, it gets difficult for us humans, right? And an example, and of course, the formula is something that you want to be customizable. You as a customer, you want to make some changes. This is mission critical. I'm going to have it this way. You can do that, right? And so, like taking it on the screen here, you can see VM performance. So how is it done, right? And what is this, right? And you can then explain this in a sense, going back to the CIO story, because at the higher level, they don't want to know the technical details, all this system architecture that is for you to take care of, right? So you can define, you can list what are the metrics, and for each metrics, the level of threshold where you think it is green, it is yellow, it is orange, it is red. To define the standard for all, in this case, your VM. In this case, you are combining VM into guest OS because the answer here is not to troubleshoot where the problem is in the guest in Windows, Linux, or the problem is in the VM. Here is at a higher level monitoring. This is again at the CIO level, right? And an application team level. So you define it this way, right? Now, and you may say, hey, E1, different VMs have a different tolerance. Yeah, that's true. VM number 1, this latency of 10 milliseconds, the app teams complains already. VM number 2, this latency, 40 milliseconds, and they don't bother. That is true. Just like we ask human being, right? And some of us can handle, with less sleep, or with some needs more sleep, some needs to drink more water. There are variants. What is important is not only the absolute number, but it is also the relative movement of this number. Again, going back to your stock market, it's not the value of the, NASDAQ or Dow Jones or STI, but it's the movement of that number, right? So then how can this be implemented? Now, there are multiple ways to implement this thing in VCF operations. And one of the way is we call it the supermetrics, right? It is basically a mathematical expression, right? It is not a traditional programming language, right? It is translating this into math. So why don't I just do a quick demo? I wanted to demo more of logs, but in the interest of time, we'll skip that and reconfigure supermetrics, right? So you go here. So one of the favorite features or ops that I've seen many customers adopt is they go and create their own metrics because you can define it, right? You can create this thing and you can share it, you can export it, right? You can import it. And in fact, well, this is Asia Pacific, right? Including Middle East, a team like there is a TAM in Turkey that built all this thing and the open source it, right? So you can actually just get it from his source. You can download this thing, right? So just not going back to the supermetrics. Oh no, I don't have edit access here. Hold on. Luckily, Vincent come to the rescue, Vincent. And thank you very much for your lab. So I'm going to connect to not having access here. Right, but just now, let me show it to you. Just now, the performance is here. All right, VM performance. That's the metrics. CPU queue here is that CPU queues over here, CPU queue, right? So that gets implemented as a CPU queue here. So that is a supermetrics, right? And see whether I think it's 10. Is that right, Finn? Is this the one or no? This is the one.
Yeah.
This is the one, Vincent, right? Thank you very much, Finn. Perfect timing. That's why it's always good to have backup. I want to show it to you guys how easy is it. Okay, so go to configuration and supermetrics. Okay, and let's just say I want to get the worst VM CPU ready in any clusters, right? In my clusters, right? And so I say call it cluster VM worst VM CPU ready. Okay, got. Okay, so this is gonna be done on a cluster. So I will type cluster. Next, I want to get the max. Okay, function max. I want to get VM. Okay, object type VM. I want to get CPU ready. Okay, so matrix type CPU. Well, why don't I just type the word ready? CPU ready. There you go. So, and I want it to be 20 seconds. So let's just get this 20 seconds. Okay. Now, there is VCF operation is an object-oriented architecture. So a cluster is a child, it has a parent of ESXi and resource pool, and these two are parent of VM. So a cluster is 2 levels higher than a VM. This is what is called in the products called traversal spec hierarchy, 2 levels down. So you set depth equals to 2, but I'm lazy because I just set it to 10. It doesn't really matter. Now, so then you want to validate this thing, correct? You want to preview it. There you go. That is the first cluster. So by looking at this, right? So this is like in the last whatever hours. This is the highest VM CPU ready of any VM at this moment. I don't care, right? On that cluster. And then you say next, and then you apply it to a policy, and then you click create, and 5 minutes later it will start appearing in all the clusters. Right? So that is an example of a modeling that you can do. And I'm just in the interest of time, I think I would like to pass it to Samir. Are you ready, Samir, to talk about the pillars?
Yeah, I am. Thank
Okay.
you for great demos and all the context setting, Yvonne. I may have to skip some slides. In the interest of time, I'll just focus on the important ones. By way of introduction, my name is Samir Roshan. I am an executive solutions architect, part of the CTO organization in Broadcom. If you go to next, Ivan. All right, so Ivan has been talking about, he's been framing this, and now we are basically coming to a section where we can discuss about the health. Now, I want to start with this particular topic because almost none of us define this in a context. Now, it is something very relatable when it comes to systems and platforms as well. Because every operations product that you can look into, every other vendor that has ever shipped has some sort of a health score in it, and as well as VCF operations, for example. But none of them hardly tell you what went into defining that particular number. For example, one Monday you are starting with a health score of, let's say, low 40s on a cluster, but all of the applications are running fine and nobody has raised a ticket in a month. Yet the score that you see in your dashboard is not matching with the application and the system behavior. The application is absolutely perfect, working fine. What it means is that the definition of system health is always contextual. So what we did is did the boring thing and defined that, as you can see on this particular slide. We ask three simple questions to the underlying platform about health. And those are, is it up, is it fast, and is it safe? Now, what defines is it up is availability, and it has to cover both halves of the stack. The first is obviously your workload, which constitutes of virtual machines at Kubernetes pods. Some may have both, some may have one, or some may have either one of them. And the infrastructure underneath, which means the appliances, typically these are management appliances that you see in your environment, or the hypervisors. Now, what you're really asking is whether something crashed or went down when you hadn't planned for it. And that answer does not live in your score, it lives in your logs. Now, a metric can tell you the host sat at 40% CPU all afternoon, but only the log will be able to tell you that it rebooted at 2 a.m. in the morning, for example. Is it fast is primarily defined by performance, and there are again two layers. The first one is around slowness, which is characterized by contention, as you can see. And contention is where the workload sat there waiting for CPU cycles, availability for memory pages, physical memory pages, etc. And the thing that produces contention, which could be very high consumption overall, and that could be a result of an undersized environment or an application not designed properly. Now, in order to answer is it fast, you should have no contention and moderate consumption. You want both of these metrics plotted over time because one number alone will not be able to tell you about the overall application performance. Now, we need to pair this up with the KPIs and SLA together for a comprehensive assessment of the question around performance. Is it safe is where the domain shifts to security and compliance. You are asking very fundamental questions here. Like, for example, are we being attacked? Is there anything going on in here that should not be? Can we stand in front of the regulator, for example, MAS in Singapore, APRA in Australia, or your internal CISO and that security team, that you meet the standard defined by them, whether it is internal security standards around hardening, any kind of zero trust policies, or standards like CIS and NIST, which are global standards. Now, this is where a continuous compliance system comes in, and it pulls information from all of the three data types, whether it is logs, events, and metrics. Now, those three questions basically answer the question around health for today. Now, everything on the right side that you see on the slide is about tomorrow. Like, for example, capacity configuration inventory will not tell you whether you are healthy this morning. They will tell you whether you are about to stop being healthy, essentially around forecasting. So capacity is right sizing, reclamation, and planning forward with what if analysis. So you basically simulate the workloads that is going to come in future and see if you have runway left in your current environment. And that is something that you can achieve through what if analysis. And it fundamentally allows you to answer an overall capacity question. Like, for example, do you have enough runway, or should you rebalance the workloads, basically take away from some and give same resources to some other workload, which is looking for it more, or it is having contention. Now, configuration is where your technical debt actually lives. And if you look at inventory, is all about movement. It's all about numbers. The number of virtual machine and host count that you have today on its own is very useless number. Now, when you take it and put it next to last quarter numbers and ask whether you had any drift with respect to the number of objects that you're planning to, for example, your capacity planning was done for, let's say, 4,000 virtual machines. And that was something that you built a greenfield environment last quarter. But by the end of this quarter, you are already up around 5,000 virtual machines. So you have a 1,000 VM configuration drift, and that is something that you have not accounted for, right? Now, this is something that this particular trend analysis gives you a kind of framework where you can do future capacity planning exercises. Now, if you circle back to this question of health that we have asked earlier about your health of your private cloud, what we have discussed just now is a framework that can help you answer some of these questions more deterministically and with context. Now, let's drill deeper into the next slide where we talk about the operational pillars. A1, next slide, please. So on the left, you look at, we have documented these operational pillars. The obvious one, if you are a platform architect, if you are a day two guy, you may end up just creating 5 dashboards for performance, capacity, availability, and you are done with it, right? You can assign owners and done by this week. However, it doesn't work like this, and this is why, right? So diagram 1 on the left shows the relationship among the pillars of operations. If you look at the red arrow on your screen here, from capacity up into performance, that's the one that gets everybody. Capacity and performance always pull against each other. One will always squeeze the other, right? So you cannot have a system where you're already out of capacity and the system is performing well. You will always find contention, right? So these are 2 important factors to remember, that it is the correlation of these pillars that is something that you have to design your platform operations around. Now, cost and price sit next to capacity. It's again going and feeding the same chain. So for example, if you have to increase capacity, it will cost you. And depending on when you're buying the hardware, like for example, today the hardware prices are so expensive, it is definitely going to cost you if you have not done proper capacity planning in your last round. Now, in the same chain, if you look at security and compliance are alongside. Now, the more secure you want your system, it's going to cost you, and the cost is going to affect capacity. So overall, if you look at these pillars, there is a correlation and interlinking of these particular pillars for you to be successful in overall private cloud management. Now, in the bottom row, you will find that there are foundations supporting these pillars. They are primarily inventory, which looks like the foundation. And then you have configuration, which is something which is not a means to an end. And nobody at the end of the day cares about what your DRS setting actually is, right? Unless until it starts affecting certain system behavior. So you will care as an administrator or as a platform architect, because you are either setting the setting that you have done is either causing or fixing a security problem, a capacity problem, a performance problem, or in fact an availability problem, right? So this basically matters to you as a platform architect. On the right side of the diagram, what you see here is the inputs that goes into those pillars. So you look into these particular boxes like reservations, commitment, and utilization. They feed into the pillars that we saw here around contention, and then that feeds into the bottom part here. Now, those 2 lines that you see here, reservation and utilization, is why the job is hard. Contention is the thing your users will feel, and it is being pushed at from the 2 directions at once. Like, for example, by what you have promised in terms of SLA, at the time of doing the capacity planning exercise, at a time of defining the platform, and by what people are actually consuming. The two may be different, right? So it's always good to have a continuous planning exercise. Now, you can also, based on some feedback that my virtual machine performance is low, you could have found that there is a contention. You could basically go and turn on reservation for that particular specific tenant or virtual machine. But then in a shared environment, that could trigger contention for the overall cluster, because you have done reservation without looking into the overall scope of the environment, right? So it's very important that we look into all of these pillars into cohesive manner. And this basically forms the backbone of how you separate running a large private cloud from just running vSphere states. I'll skip the next slide. If you go to a slide and the capacity management directly, because we have less time here. And this is something that has been asked in the questions. I was answering some of the live questions. This is something very, very important at this point of time. If you look at, we are in 2026, we are into two major wars going globally, and that has impacted the overall global supply chain. What has meant is that we are seeing a 3x to 5x surge in availability and pricing of new hardware. Even if you're willing to spend money, the hardware supply chain, first of all, it's very hard to procure the hardware. And if you're able to procure it, the delivery times are ranging anywhere between 3 to 5 months. So it is becoming very, very important that a platform architect job and a person who is doing capacity management, you do both your art and science right. So in summary, hardware has got expensive, core counts has gone up, and licensing always follows what we see. Software licensing follows what we see in the hardware side. And if you ask me, the cheapest capacity that you will buy today is what you already had, right? If you're not using it, that's the cheapest capacity that you can use. So now let's look at this particular framework. That is something that is going to be important for you. Now, this is the model for designing a vSphere cluster. So when you look at from left to right, everything on the left of the red dotted line is the planning part. Now, which is in theory, let's say this is a green field, and you do not have any workload that exists yet. You are estimating. And everything on the right is your day 2 operating stage. It is live, and you are also doing a continuous capacity planning as you go. Now, if you look at starting on the left side, let's start at the diamond. The first question that you have to ask yourself is, based on, even if it's greenfield, based on the math that you have done and the hardware that you have available, are you overcommitting? Now, if the answer is no, then you just go ahead and start allocation. Now, why this particular answer is important is now there could be some physical workloads that you are moving first time into a virtual environment, let's say large mission critical application databases, and the application team does not want to take a chance around doing CPU overcommitment. So for example, they don't want to have 2:1, 4:1, 6:1, 8:1, and whatnot. They want to have absolute guarantee over the physical resources which are going to be available to it when it becomes virtual. So at that point of time, you do 1:1, and then you move along. That's the simplest decision you can make, and you start moving from planning to allocation straight away, right? And that is something will be probably 5 to 10% of your environment workloads. Not every workload is going to be following that particular class of service. Now, but for most of you and for most of our customer, that answer is, the diamond answer is yes, where majority of cases is where you are looking at utilizing the environment effectively. The whole point of virtualization is that you are able to pack more virtual machines on a given physical infrastructure. Now, in this part, again, there are two types of service. One is mono, which is a single class of service, again, very rare. We see in customer environments, but this is class of service where you have virtual machines created with the same t-shirt sizing, same performance SLAs, same backup class and whatnot, right? So for that, again, the decisions are very much simple. You can basically give them equal treatment, and then you move into the planning phase. But what we see is a class of service where there is a mixture of gold and silver and bronze. Again, there are different t-shirt sizes that goes into there. And this is something that is a technique that allows to mix service tiers, and that it also allows you not only to mix service tiers on a VM level, it also allows you to mix virtual machines and container-based, Kubernetes-based workloads. So, for example, VCF enables you to run virtual machines and Kubernetes and container workloads side by side with VCF and VKS combination. Now, you can do the planning once you arrive mono mix and you go to the planning phase. You can do the planning in two ways. One is based on utilization. So you may have a historical understanding of utilization patterns already. And utilization is a classical way of sizing based on past historical data or assumptions, right? Now, in this case, again, if you're charging for a particular virtual machine, then you have to go into more of a allocation framework around sizing. Like, for example, if you have a chargeback and a showback mechanism, the way you should size is based on allocation so that you can define pricing for a CPU and memory that you want to charge the departments that is borrowing the services from your environment. If it is, again, there's no throwback and chargeback involved, you can move ahead into the operating stage. Now, within utilization, which is, you'll see this allocation mechanism, which is your overcommit ratio. And this is where you define for example, one department within your organization would say that I am fine with having overcommitment ratio higher because my workloads are general server virtualization. I'm happy with 4:1 in terms of overcommit ratio around CPU. One department can come, which is doing, let's say, machine learning or data science, like, no, absolutely, we don't want any overcommitment. It's 1:1. So the pricing for that is something that you can decide. And that's where the allocation model basically comes in. Now, within this model, you can define the next thing, which is around guarantees, and that is where the reservation comes in. Now, in reservation model, you size based on guaranteed resources to prevent over-allocation during planning stages. And you can define quality of service guardrails. So, for example, if you look at the QoS solution there, that exactly helps you to define quality of service guardrails. And this is something that you can basically then again further define based on number of shares at an individual virtual machine level, or you can define the quality of service or allocation of resources at a resource pool level, right? So there is granularity that is available within VCF that allows you to play with these multiple different models. Now, what you look at here is when you do all this and you move into an operating stage, the capacity planning exercise never stops. And this is where the actual day two comes in, is where you are constantly checking your environment when it's an operating, whether it is monthly, quarterly, or a half-yearly basis, and seeing how the environment is doing against what it was sized for, and are there any glaring issues that is there in the environment. And you also provide your management a report of runway in terms of, let's say, if a new project is coming up, are you able to host those set of workloads and workloads onto the existing environment that you have, or you have to basically put in a budget for the hardware available for the next set of additions to that particular cluster. So it's very important that you move from the first stage to a continuous capacity planning model, and that's where what good looks like, right? Now, what I've described on this slide is what VCF operations is really good at, and that's what we have seen the demo so far, which has been covered earlier. And in the next two slides, we will quickly scan through matrix for cluster performance and risks. So these are going to be very quick slides. So the first one is now you have defined, if you can stay on the performance one, I'll just quickly cover that. Now, so we have learned the art of, how do you define health? How do you define the capacity plan, planning exercise? Now, if you have to be looking into and wearing a troubleshooting hat without, going really into VMware support, and if you have to do that first level of triaging yourself, what are some of the important matrices that you can quickly look at and basically triage some of the performance before it goes into level 3, level 4 escalations? So if you look into this, what we have tried to show you as an example of matrix that will help you analyze the problem in terms of how deep is the problem. And you can see there are 4 bands: green, yellow, orange, classic traffic light patterns. how broad is this particular issue? Is it pertaining to a particular virtual machine, or is it affecting the entire cluster? Is it happening at one ESXi level, or is it spanning across all of my, let's say, 24 nodes in my workload domain, for example, right? So this is something that you can take and look into your system behavior. And some of these things can be also customized based on your thresholds of how you define green, yellow, orange, and red for your environment. Next, we look into the risk. How do you determine risk with respect to your cluster? So similar to how do you uncover and triage performance? This is where your risk pattern comes in, and this is a leading indicator since you need to focus on avoiding contention and oversaturation, right? So some of the metrics that we look at is again, this can be varied from organization to organization, workloads to workloads. So for example, 80% is what is an average number that we consider acceptable in the industry, which is where you want your cluster to be not more utilized more than 80%. Again, you can look into n+1 as a context around if a node fails, you still have a performing cluster. And if you are looking at n+2, your cluster needs to be sized appropriately that allows you n+2 and still allows you an 80 percentile with respect to utilization, right? So these are things that you should look at, again, with the same traffic band, green, yellow, orange, and red, across these 5 sections: utilization, reservation, allocation, and monster VM. As you guys all know, we basically call virtual machines, let's say if it's a 64 vCPU, 500 GB RAM, or a terabyte of RAM, these are all classified as monster virtual machines, and typically these are not crowded in a vSphere. You may have 1 or 2 of those running in a ESXi, and then overall from a cluster imbalance perspective. Now, in the next slide, we will sum it up. How all of this basically matter. So now you read these the 4 logic lines, right? So high level logic. I think Ivan also talked about automating some of these things that we discussed, right? Around capacity planning, around performance management. And this is an example of an advanced capacity management where the high level logic basically defines any virtual machine being stopped, being provisioned based on capacity, performance, and risk factors. Now, these questions are there, like if either capacity or performance is red, then yes, no, it should not be provisioned. If your risk is orange or red, then again, it should not be provisioned. If your risk is red, again, then it should not be positioned. So if all of these other permutations is yes, then yes, you go ahead and provision the virtual machines, which is what you see in the red corner here. But if any one of these things are in red, then you should look into this particular system that you can define as part of your overall capacity management, so that any automated virtual machine workflow will not get failed. It will basically interact with your automated provisioning workflow that you have maybe created in VCF automation, and then stop the provisioning itself instead of running the provisioning and failing at a later stage of your overall automation workflow. Now, in order to, first of all, I would like you to thank all of you to attend the session today. Let me summarize the session, and then I'll hand it back to Debbie. Ivan, if you go to the next slide. So 4 key takeaways. I think we have done a good job around showcasing the product capabilities, demoing, and also going through structurally the components around the main and detailed concepts around capacity planning. How do you look into troubleshooting and things like that? At the end of the day, what we are looking at is it's all about applications. So whatever you develop as an operational expertise, it needs to be application centric. The environment or your platform needs to transition from to a key performance indicator, KPI based, and eventually an SLA based as a platform. Now, VCF allows you to do both. When we say dual nature, essentially what it means is the VCF platform has become so powerful over the years that it now allows you to have virtual machines. It now allows you to have Kubernetes, containers. And traditionally, what we have seen, the administrators and architects have been different for virtual machines and container platforms. This is your chance to develop expertise on both the platforms and merge these two worlds together. And VCF Operations is the tool that you can use to build that expertise and master that nature. And the last one is, if you're not already on VCF 9.1, we highly encourage you to go and adopt VCF 9.1. It's super capable. And especially with VCF 9.1 operations, you will see a ton of capabilities that we have thrown today with you in demo. And you will be able to do that and experience that in firsthand in your organization. So with that, I will hand it back to Debbie. Thank you so much for your time and have a great rest of the day.
Okay, I'll just do a backup for Debbie maybe. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to our speakers, Ivan, Abhijit, and Samir. Thank you for the wonderful session. We had almost 70 questions. Just before everybody drops off, please ensure you take the survey, and I promise there will be a different survey in the last session. So ensure you attend the last session. And for anything certification related, please feel us to drop an email. You have my email address. And explore on tour, explore. Yes, you have ability to get your hands dirty on the hands-on labs and the free certifications, exams on site. But worry not if you're not able to appear on any of the Explore or Explore on tours. You still have Tech Summits coming up on the APJ region, plus more webinars. So we will regain our webinar series after our Explore on tour. So look out for your inbox for an invite on migration 14th of October. Thank you everybody for joining and see you next week. Speakers and panels can drop in. Please ensure you take your survey.